When somebody says that life is not worth living, this could be for hundreds of different reasons. However, a common theme is that the person feels there's no meaning to their existence. This may be because they have suffered a traumatic event, such as the death of a loved one, or that they have found out some information that has significantly changed their worldview. Many philosophers and theorists throughout history have posed the idea that the Earth and life upon it was randomly created. Therefore, humanity and our lives have never had any meaning. So, why does it matter to us so deeply? Albert Camus explored the phenomenon that humans attached themselves to religious belief systems so that they could be assigned rules and purpose, even when there was no hard evidence to support the existence of that god or any other. His findings led him to consider committing philosophical suicide due to the sheer absurdity that people will follow with conviction any path that gives them a purpose, whether it's real or perceived. These actions are purely to fulfill the human desire for existential purpose, when there isn't any. Due to the rift between the human psychological need for everything to be answered, for there to be a meaning, and the apparent evidence that in fact there was no meaning to be found in existence, Camus labelled this the absurd. I looked up at the massive signs and stars in the sky and laid myself open for the first time to the benign indifference of the world. In this video, we are going to take a look at how to live in a world that you know has no meaning. When you are aware of the absurdity and the meaningless of it all, it is important to ask yourself why you should continue to live, because the answers may surprise you. People have played on words and pretended to believe that refusing to grant a meaning to life necessarily leads to a declaring that it's not worth living. In truth, there is no necessary common measure between these two judgments. Let's look at this statement again. Camus has observed that over the centuries, society has come to the conclusion, in general, that you might as well not exist if there's no meaning or purpose in your life. He is opposing that, telling us that just because there is no obvious meaning for you to be alive, it doesn't mean that you should take measures to cease to exist. On the surface, this may seem like quite a simple way to look at life, cheering on people, saying, "Don't be depressed, it will all turn out okay in the end." But in reality, he is forcing us to look at a deeper truth. Before the internet, before mass global communication, before we regularly travelled across continents, even before fire, when our ancestors foraged for raw foods and lived as animals, the planet Earth was still a rock spinning through space. This isn't some new 20th century or 21st century discovery. People have always looked out into the night sky and pondered the meaning of life in the depths of the cold, dark night. And here we are thousands of years later doing the same. If being alive, wanting to live, was directly related to having a meaning, then we would never have made it this far as a sentient species. There may be some triggering content in the following passage where we discuss Albert Camus' theories about ending existence. Please remember that this is presented for self-improvement and discovery. It is an important part of historical philosophy too. You see, Camus looked at the centuries of people who followed religious doctrine. This way of life gave them rules to follow, as well as some fanciful explanations to the meaning of life and even life's origins. One of the most well-known is the Christian story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The issue is that many people were not willing to make the leap of faith into this narrative and fully commit to the origin stories that religions provided. These people became the outsiders, the depressives, the ones who were considered gloomy or pessimistic. Their logical minds could not cope with the ancient stories, and we see this very much today, where more and more people are disillusioned by major religions, seeking answers in science. But science cannot give us an existential meaning for existence. Dealing with this tidal wave of depression and disillusioned people, there came the unfortunate increase in reported suicides and mental health disorders. Albert Camus theorized that there were two forms of suicide that people took on. Physical suicide, which is the act of ending your physical life, and on the other end of the spectrum, there was philosophical suicide. The first is self-explanatory, the second is a little more complex. Camus explains that there is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. All the rest, whether or not the world has 3 dimensions, whether the mind has 9 or 12 categories, comes afterwards. These are games one must first answer. Philosophical suicide is that moment when a person decides to ignore their true inner feelings and follow an organised doctrine that offers them false hope and meaning to everyday life. This means that they join the existing masses of people who refuse to accept their place in a meaningless world and would rather fool themselves with stories just so that they can feel safe and lead an easier life. In essence, it is getting someone else to think and make decisions for you, rather than coming to your own conclusions. When people join in with this falsehood, they may as well be the walking dead. Camus suggested that we acknowledge the inherent meaninglessness of the entire universe, and instead of becoming anxious or depressed, we revolt against it. We empower ourselves with the absurdity of living. Thus, I draw from the absurd 3 consequences, which are my revolt, my freedom, and my passion. By the mere activity of consciousness, I transform into a rule of life what was an invitation to death, and I refuse suicide. So, although the word suicide is used often when talking about the philosophy, it is merely an expression to show how important and dramatic the concept is. Camus posits that we can remain aware of our place in the universe and refuse to be sucked into the absurdity caused by the human mind in search of answers which the universe fails to provide. This is described in literature as the absurd man, but the concept is neither male or female. It encompasses all genders and simply speaks to humans. Camus attributes 3 characteristics to the absurd: revolt, freedom, and passion. Firstly, the absurd person refuses to accept the invitation of either physical or philosophical suicide. That is, they refuse to be ruled by depressive feelings and feelings of having to join an organisation just to feel comfortable and ignore the truth of the world. They entirely accept that there is a disparity between the human need for meaning and order and the impossibility of finding that within the universe. In this mindset, the person acknowledges that there is a conflict between what we want and what we can have. Moreover, the person doesn't wish to solve this conflict and is able to exist alongside these feelings. Revolt, revolution comes because they revolt against their own instinctive need to seek out the meaning of life and put everything to order. He who, without negating it, does nothing for the eternal. Not that nostalgia is foreign to him, but he prefers his courage and his reasoning. The first teaches him to live without appeal and to get along with what he has. The second informs him of his limits. Assured of his temporarily limited freedom, of his revolt devoid of future, and of his mortal consciousness, he lives out his adventure within the span of his lifetime. That is his field, his action, which he shields from any judgment but his own. Let's break this quote down because there are many interpretations of what Camus meant by this statement, and of course, it's been translated into English, so some directness has been lost. A person acknowledges that they are doing nothing with any meaning or searching for an eternal purpose, but they can still think fondly of these ideas of the past. They still have the yearning to find a meaning, but they prefer to listen to their own morals and explanation for life. Accepting that there is no eternal meaning of life allows a person to be more satisfied and be happy living with what they have and what comes their way. The fact that they understand there is still a tendency to desire answers and purpose means that the person is aware that they are human and that they have limits and flaws. Once the person is comfortable with knowing this freedom, and once they understand that they can push back and revolt against the tendency to find meaning within the universe, the person can then live their life and explore different philosophies and experiences with an open mind throughout their whole experience. Because the person is open and grounded by the knowledge that life is meaningless, they are able to act in situations without worrying what others think. Because most often, those other people are following the social norms. They follow a doctrine to keep them amused, like The Walking Dead. The main themes of Camus' work are living in the present moment, acceptance of our situation within the universe, and acceptance that there is no higher power to aspire to. Everything just exists because it does. It's random and without an ultimate purpose, and this is okay. Taking into account all of the points we have mentioned so far, this means that someone adhering to Camus' way of thinking is also exempt from morality, consequence, and the limits placed on us by society. Because living in the present moment, you only deal with the present moment. Therefore, you can do whatever you like. You're not confined to ordinary structures of life because nothing matters. As you may have guessed, this also fits into a nihilistic mindset and way of life, where you gratify your senses immediately and you do not have to worry that your actions will be judged or could cause harm in the future because life is meaningless. So, is this all just a theory, or are there really people that live this way? The characters in Albert Camus' novels, who are used as a literary device to discuss the theories, are not intended as lifestyle guides for us to follow. Instead, we should be analysing why they have chosen to be living in the absurd and continue their existence in this world full of unanswered questions and no purpose. Why have they revolted against physical and psychological suicide? To shed light on this, Camus presents us with different, well-known characters from society. The first is the seducer, Don Juan. This story is famous, and even today, a man who has many short-term relationships or sexual conquests can often be described as Don Juan. When you read the story of the Don's lifestyle, the general reaction is to feel pity for a person who is so promiscuous and never seems to find true love. There is also a moral story that by following the seducer's example, you can end up old, lonely, and depressed. However, what if Don Juan was living in the absurd? He was satisfied because he did not care for the future, and he resolved his unhappiness by being gratified in the present moment. Just because he chose to repeatedly chase women and become their partner, does that mean that he doesn't feel true love? Or does it mean that he feels true love for many people across his life? What is more valuable and why? As a society, if you are controlled by the appeal of a higher power to hold your morals to, then his actions would seem unacceptable. But if everyone lived in the moment, does the amount of sexual partners or the way your neighbours view you really matter? The stage actor is another character that we can learn from. Unlike creative works that are written down or movies that are recorded and survive for decades, when a stage actor performs, the moment is lost almost as soon as the words leave their mouth. Essentially, you are enjoying it in the moment, and that is its value. Embracing the absurdity of life, a person who is acting acknowledges that life is fleeting and that because there is no meaning to life, there is no hope or benefit to long-lasting fame. The actor understands and comes to terms with their place in the universe. Leaving a legacy is not important. Just like a performer, the actor will choose to live the highlights, the best bits of all the possible narratives available within the space of their time on Earth. Essentially, having a great deal of fun because, as the saying goes, you only live once. If a person falls into the realms of being an actor, they will keep others at a distance because they believe that the people around them are unaware that life is futile, and so society has fashioned a set of rules and ways to act where the people don't even realise they are acting. The actor avoids getting tangled up in everyday, ordinary society and simply wants to live in a way that satisfies their need for happiness, such as good food, love, sex, excitement, and relaxation. Because what's the point in worry and stress if there's no ultimate meaning? The difference between the actor and the people in general society who are playing their roles is that the actor is awakened to his situation and revolts against the need to become one of the mindless masses. Finally, Camus describes the conqueror. This person is fully aware of the pointless situation that they are in, and they are aware of the absurd nature of society. They decide to embrace this for their own delight. For example, absurd conquerors understand that all that matters is the here and now. They can never conquer fate or time. In fact, anything they do in the present moment will eventually be undone or destroyed by the act of time and history. But they do it anyway. Battles and wars of the past, invading nations, fame, fortune, these may all have been devastating or fantastic at the moment they were happening, yet the thing that unites them all is that the passage of time ultimately destroys everything. It is the great leveller of buildings and people alike. So, what does the conqueror do? Their mindset is to conquer themselves again and again, fight against a philosophical death, live life with passion and pleasure frequently across their existence, be it 20 years or 100 years in length. If there is a sin against life, it consists perhaps not so much of despairing of life as in hoping for another life and in eluding the implacable grandeur of this life. The seducer, the actor, and the conqueror all live in the present moment. They all live within the absurd. That is to say that they all take part in existing in life, but they are aware of human flaws and tendencies to seek an ultimate meaning within the act of simply being alive. So how can we use their examples to become happy, or keep wanting to live in a world which will be unchanged by our presence? What is the point of us existing in this tiny dark corner of a bleak and terrifying universe? Being part of the absurd in the extreme can look nihilistic. This kind of lifestyle takes a toll on your physical and mental health. As with anything, moderation is the key. If you are worried about your place in the universe, don't dismiss it and attempt to fit in with general society by joining a religion or a group that will try to stifle your human nature. Instead, acknowledge the meaningless of it all and apply this to situations and your progression in life. Just as with Taoism, Albert Camus theorises, "Blessed are the hearts that can bend, for they shall never be broken." Meaning that if you allow yourself to go with the flow of life around you in the present, you will be much happier. You'll be able to find deep enjoyment in situations and moments that you may have previously not fully embraced due to externally worrying about how others view your choices and your place in the structure of the universe. If you have enjoyed this video and you're inspired by what you've seen, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Let's change the world together.